The storm had come without warning. The sky above the northern river was a churning wall of gray, and rain hammered the cliffs and forests with relentless fury. Thunder shook the mountains, and the river, swollen by days of unceasing rain, roared like a living beast. Leora ran along the rocky bank, her cloak torn and soaked through. Her small village lay behind her, warm fires flickering in wooden cottages, but the cries she had heard were closer to the river than her home. The voices of the frightened reached her heart before her mind. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the river, and her breath caught in her throat. There, tossed in the white-capped waves, was a small creature struggling against the current. It was a pup, a young wolf with fur dark as midnight and eyes wide with terror. Without hesitation, Leora waded into the freezing waters. The icy spray stung her skin, but she ignored it. Step by careful step, she fought against the river's pull until she was close enough to reach the trembling pup. Its teeth chattered and it whimpered, claws scraping at the rushing water. "Hold still, little one," she whispered, her voice strong against the roar of the river. The river seemed to fight her as if it recognized the importance of this small life. Waves slammed against her legs, pulling her off balance, but her hands clutched the pup firmly. She wrapped her cloak around it, trying to shield it from the water, and took a deep breath. One last surge of the river, and she pulled with every ounce of strength she had. Finally, she stumbled onto the bank, gasping and drenched, the pup trembling in her arms. She hugged it close, pressing her body against it to warm it. Relief washed over her. She had saved it. But the moment of triumph was brief. A shadow fell across the rocks, tall and imposing, and the wind carried the sound of measured footsteps. Leora looked up and froze. The figure that stepped into view was not a man like any she had ever seen. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an air of authority that seemed to bend the storm itself. His eyes, dark and unyielding, locked on the pup in her arms. "You dare touch him?" His voice was calm but sharp, cutting through the roar of the river. Leora's heart skipped. "And I saved him. He was drowning," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. The man's eyes narrowed. "That pup is no ordinary creature. It is mine, sacred, untouchable. You have no right." She held him tighter, her defiance burning through her fear. "I could not let him die. I couldn't just watch." The storm seemed to pause for a heartbeat. The man stepped closer, his cloak billowing like a shadow over the rocks. "You have courage," he said slowly. "But courage alone does not grant you safety. You cannot leave here, not while he lives." Leora's breath caught in her throat. The pup whimpered and nuzzled her neck, sensing the tension. I only wish to return him," she said. "You cannot," the man said, his voice lower now, almost a whisper carried on the wind. "He is bound to me, and now—" "To you?" The words chilled her, but the truth in them was undeniable. She could not simply walk away. The man turned, beckoning her to follow. "Come with me. If you stay here, the river may take more than the pup next. Trust me. It is safer with me than anywhere else you might go." Leora hesitated, the storm raging around her. But the pup whined, shivering in her arms, and she nodded. She had no choice. The palace was a fortress carved into the cliffs, dark stones rising like jagged teeth above the river. Leora had never seen anything like it. Guards in black armor flanked the gate, their eyes cold and unyielding. The man led her inside, the pup still clutched against her chest. Inside, the walls were lined with torches that flickered against tapestries of old battles and kings long past. Leora's heart pounded as she realized she had entered a world far removed from her village life. Every step echoed in the grand hall, a reminder of the power that surrounded her. The man, Kale, turned to her. "This is no ordinary place, and this is no ordinary pup," he said. "It carries more than life. It carries the bond of my lineage, the protection of my kingdom. And now, it carries your fate as well." Leora's fingers tightened around the pup. "My fate?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes," Kale said. "You have drawn yourself into the currents of destiny, little healer. And destiny does not release easily." He walked away, leaving her in a chamber lined with dark velvet curtains and windows that looked out over the storm-lashed river. Leora sank onto a bench, trying to calm her racing heart. The pup licked her hand, and for a moment the warmth of its body grounded her in the madness of the situation. Days passed. Leora learned that the palace held secrets she could barely understand. Halls where whispers moved like shadows. corridors where portraits of ancient kings seemed to watch her every step. Kale was ever present, a silent sentinel at the edge of her awareness, his eyes observing, judging, yet strangely curious. The pup, whom Leora named Fenrir, began to bond with her. It followed her wherever she went, nuzzling against her and sometimes staring at Kyle with what seemed like knowing eyes. Leora noticed a faint glow along Fenrir's fur at night, a shimmer of silver that pulsed like a heartbeat. One evening, Kyle approached her as she tended to Fenrir near a window overlooking the river. The moonlight glinted off the wet cliffs, the storm long past, but the river still wild and unyielding. "Do you know what he is?" Kyle asked, his voice quieter than usual. Leora looked up, meeting his gaze. "A pup," she said softly, "who needed help." Kyle's eyes softened for a moment, but only a moment. "He is more than that. He carries a part of me, a part of this kingdom, a part of an ancient power that cannot be harmed, except by those who are chosen." Leora's heart skipped. "Chosen?" Kale nodded, stepping closer. "And now, you are part of this whether you wish it or not. You saved him, yes, but in doing so, you have bound your fate to mine." The words should have frightened her, yet they stirred something else. Curiosity, wonder, and something she could not name. Kale turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You cannot leave," he said again, almost softly. "Not yet. Not while he lives." Leora watched him go, the weight of his words pressing on her chest like a storm cloud. She looked down at Fenrir, who nuzzled her hand, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. She realized then that her life had changed forever. The river had taken her courage and given her a destiny she had never asked for, and a king who refused to let her go. Outside, the river roared on, wild and eternal. Inside, Leora's heart beat faster than the storm ever could, a rhythm she could not yet understand. The palace lay quiet under the silver glow of the moon, yet the air inside trembled with unspoken tension. Leora sat by the window of her chamber, Fenrir curled in her lap. The pup's soft breathing was the only sound against the distant howl of the wind outside. Kale had left her alone for the night, but his presence lingered in the flickering torchlight and the subtle way the palace seemed to breathe around her. She could not ignore the truth she had begun to feel. Her heart had changed since that stormy night by the river. The pup had not been the only life saved. Somehow Kale's world had begun to touch hers, and she could not untangle the pull between them. The next morning, Kale returned, moving through the halls with the quiet authority of a king and the stealth of a predator. His gaze fell on her, calm but piercing. Leora felt the familiar tension coil in her chest. "You need to understand," he said, voice low, "that this is no longer a matter of choice. The pup's safety is tied to your presence, and soon the dangers that follow him will test both of us." Leora's hand instinctively tightened on Fenrir's fur. "I've already risked my life once. I will do it again if I must. But I am not yours to command." Kale's lips curved faintly, almost a shadow of a smile. "No," he said softly, "you are not. Yet in saving him, you have drawn a bond neither of us can deny. Fate does not allow for simple choices." He turned and walked toward the balcony, and she could not help but follow. The moonlight painted his face in silver, revealing a softness beneath his regal armor. Leora realized that for all his power, he carried a loneliness deeper than the river's current. Days passed as Kale tested her courage. He introduced her to the palace's mysteries, the hidden libraries of forbidden knowledge, the enchanted gardens where plants whispered secrets, and the halls where the past king's spirits seemed to linger. Each day Leora learned more of Kale's world, and with it more of him. Fenrir grew as well, stronger, his eyes shining with an intelligence beyond ordinary animals. He seemed to understand not only Leora's moods but Kale's intentions. The pup would sit at Kyle's feet, then leap to Leora's lap, bridging the distance between them in ways words could not. One evening, while walking through the moonlit garden, Kyle stopped suddenly. "There is a prophecy," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "A legend older than the walls of this palace. It says that the Alpha King's heart can only be softened through trust, through courage, and through compassion. The pup, the one you saved, carries the key to that change." Leora's eyes widened. "You mean me?" Kale nodded, though his gaze did not waver. "It is not simple. This bond you have formed. It is more than friendship, more than duty. It is the tether between life and destiny, between the present and what is yet to come. You are entwined with him and with me in ways you cannot yet see." The words were heavy, yet in them was a strange invitation. She felt fear, yes, but also an undeniable pull, like the river itself calling her forward. The test of their bond came sooner than expected. Dark clouds gathered over the kingdom once again, and with them whispers of a curse long thought dormant. The palace trembled under the approach of an ancient power, a shadow that could unravel life itself. Fenrir growled, ears flat, fur bristling. The pup's eyes glowed with a silver light, warning of the danger beyond. Kyle moved swiftly, drawing Leora with him to the tower that overlooked the northern river. "You must stay close," he ordered. "The magic in him is connected to you. If you falter, it may be too late for any of us." Leora nodded, clutching Fenrir to her chest as Kale guided them through hidden passages and stairways, the storm outside raging like a living force. Each step was a test of courage and trust, and Leora felt her fear mingle with exhilaration. The line between danger and desire blurred, and for the first time, she realized how deeply she had come to rely on Kale, not only for safety but for guidance, for understanding, for the strange calm his presence brought her heart. They reached the cliff where Leora had first rescued Fenrir. The river below churned with unnatural force, reflecting the stormy sky above. Kale knelt and placed the pup on the ground. "You must do this," he said, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You are the bridge between him and the world. Only your courage can awaken the bond fully." Leora swallowed hard. The river roared, the wind tore at her hair, but she stepped forward. She knelt beside Fenrir, whispering words she did not know she remembered from some distant, instinctive place. The pup's glow intensified, silver light wrapping around both Leora and Kale. The bond between them thrummed like a heartbeat in the air, connecting human, king, and magical creature. Kale's hand found hers, their fingers brushed, electricity surging in that quiet contact. No words were needed. The trust, the shared courage, and the silent acknowledgement of each other's hearts spoke louder than anything else. Fenrir leaped into her arms, glowing brighter, and the darkness around the river seemed to lift, the ancient curse retreating before the warmth of bravery and love combined. When the storm finally subsided, the first light of dawn painted the cliffs in gold and rose. Leora stood at the river's edge, Fenrir resting contentedly in her arms. Kale approached, uncharacteristically gentle, his eyes filled with something she had not seen before: gratitude, vulnerability, and something deeper. "You chose to save him," Kale said softly. "Not because of duty, not because of fate, but because your heart is brave, and now, you may have saved me too." Leora's breath caught. She felt the pull of the past days, the fear, the tension, the longing, all converging in that moment. She realized that the bond between them was no longer defined by power or obligation, but by choice and trust. Kale reached out, placing a hand lightly on Fenrir's head, then on her shoulder. "You have taught me what it means to trust, to care, and to surrender to what is beyond control. That is a power even kings cannot command." She looked into his eyes, the storm and shadows of the past fading, replaced by a quiet understanding. "And you've taught me that courage can take many forms," she said softly. "Even in the face of kings and rivers and ancient magic." The pup yipped happily, sensing the completion of the bond, and leaped to Kale's side, circling between them. Leora laughed softly, the sound echoing in the quiet morning. For a moment, the palace seemed less a fortress and more a home, filled with new possibilities. Yet even as they stood there, a ripple in the air reminded them that the world was never simple. Dark clouds gathered once more on the horizon, subtle and distant, hinting at challenges yet to come. The kingdom remained alive with magic and mystery, its secrets far from fully revealed. Kale's gaze fell on Leora, serious again, yet softer than before. "The path ahead is not without peril," he said, "but now we face it together, as king and healer, as guardian and companion, as more than either of us expected." Leora nodded, holding Fenrir close. "Together," she echoed. The sun rose over the river, glinting off the water like fire and silver intertwined. For the first time since the storm, the river seemed calm, its wildness tempered by the courage and bond of 3 lives connected: human, king, and magical pup. But the distant horizon whispered of challenges yet unseen, and the world beyond the palace waited, alive with shadows and possibilities. And in that quiet, Leora knew one thing. She had changed forever, as had Kale, as had the kingdom itself. Fate had pulled them together, but it was their choices, courage, and hearts that would carry them forward. The story of the Alpha King, the healer, and the magical pup had only just begun.